morning, class. We're going to be looking at business communication and conflict management. And in the course of this lecture, we're going to address what business communication is. So it's expected that at the end of the lecture, you should be able to understand what business communication is, the barriers to effective communications, routes of communication, types of business communication, the process of planning business messages and selecting channels of communication, information technology for business communication, statistical information, meetings, discussions, and interviews. So, as participants in this course, you should have a clear understanding of the concept of business communication, as I did mention. You should be able to underline the basic principles underlining modern business communication and apply these principles in varied contexts. You should be able to advance barriers to effective communication and state the rules of communication, list and explain the types of communication. You should be able to explain the role of perception, attitude, or generality, credibility, and expectation in communication. You should have a grasp of the state of the importance of reading and listening skills. You should be conversant with the process of planning business messages, developing audience, profit, and selecting channels of communication. And also abreast yourself with the role of information technology for business communication. Explain the concept of statistical information, meetings, discussions, and interviews. Introducing what business communication is. Communication actually is a process of exchanging information or ideas between two or more people. It is a fundamental human need that allows us to build relationships, share knowledge, and collaborate with others. Communication can take many different forms, including verbal, non-verbal, and written. So communication is actually a complex process that involves both the sender and the receiver. The sender is actually responsible for encoding the message, while the receiver is responsible for decoding the message. In order for communication to be successful, the sender and receiver must share a common understanding of the language and symbols that are being used. Business communication actually is a process of exchanging information between individuals within a business or organization and with external stakeholders. It is an essential part of any successful business, and it allows for the sharing of ideas, the resolution of conflicts, and the achievement of common goals. So effective communication can help the individual and the organization to actually improve employee morale and productivity. It also helps in building stronger relationships with customers and clients. It enhances the company's reputation. It reduces misunderstandings and errors, and ultimately increases the organization's profits. There are two types of business communication. You have the internal and the external communication. The internal communication takes place within the organization, and it is used in sharing information about the company policies and procedures. It provides feedback to employees, it motivates and inspires employees, and it also helps in resolving conflicts between employees. External communication, on the other hand, takes place between the organization and its external stakeholders, such as the organization's customers, clients, investors, and so on. It helps in promoting the company's products and services. It builds relationships with customers and clients, helps in managing the company's reputation, and also helps to respond to customers' inquiries and complaints. The concept of business communication. Business communication is actually a dual way of passing information between the company and her stakeholders. The components of communication includes the sender from where information emanates, which is the source, the message, which is the information itself, channel, which is the medium of communication, the receiver, which are the audience, reaction is the feedback, and also the environment. The function of communication, which are the basic rules of communication, is for information, motivation, and control. The reasons why people communicate are to meet emotional needs, to gain attention, to share feelings, is for marketing, forming friendship and closeness with others, building profitable relationships, and making them stronger. But there can be barriers to effective communication. And these barriers focus on the use of language, the cultural diversity, gender differences, status differences, and physical separation. These issues can hinder effective communication. But there can also be strategies which we use in reducing these barriers to effective communication. And the strategies that can be used are to recognize the perspective of the communication, to avoid stereotyping your audience so that you don't form an opinion of your audience in the course of communicating. You should also be aware that your listeners may receive a different message, so you should be careful with the message that you're passing across. You should form a relationship and then communicate. When you apply these strategies, you will be able to have an effective communication. You should also accept that jargon may be negative communication. So as much as possible, avoid the use of jargon and time your message appropriately so that your audience do not go bored in the course of communicating, and practice full disclosure of your message. There are also routes to communication, and these routes include the vertical or downward communication. You have the lateral horizontal communication, you have upward communication, you have grapevine communication, and diagonal or crosswise communication. There are two types of communication tools that can be used. You can use the personal communication tool, and you can also use non-personal communication tool. The elements of business communication are advertising, sales promotion, publicity and public relations, personal selling, direct marketing, and sponsorship. The types of communication are verbal communication, non-verbal communication, or interpersonal communication, written communication, formal or informal communication, and you also have the visual communication. There are key areas of communication in management, and these key areas include relationship building, employees engagement, employee recognition, employee motivation, employee coaching, and so on. There are challenges to communication, and these challenges to business communication include lack of strategic consistency, lack of needed skill set among marketing staff when they don't have the needed skill for communication, the scarcity for creativity and innovation in order to make communication effective, inefficient marketing budget when the budget for marketing or transmitting information is not adequate, lack of standard measurement process, lack of technology advancement support system. And there are issues also to note in business communication. Issue of technology, these are some of the factors that have facilitated effective communication in the 21st century. The evolution of the internet technology, such as software, hardware, and network coverage, has actually enhanced effective communication and has made it also easier. And another issue that enhances communication is effective listening skills. A good listener will listen not only to what is being said, but also to what is left unsaid or only partially said. So effective listening involves observing body language and noticing inconsistencies between verbal and non-verbal messages. Uh, the other skill that needs to be developed and imbibed for effective communication is the listening skill. A good listener will listen not only to what is being said, but also to what is left unsaid or partially said. So it is expected that we should have a good understanding of the body language and notice the inconsistency between what has been said verbally and the non-verbal message that is passed across. There is also another skill that is essential in business communication, and that is a reading skill. Reading is actually useful. The way you read something will depend on your purpose. So you read different texts in different ways, and in everyday life, you usually know why you are reading. There should be a purpose why you are reading, and you should aim at fulfilling that purpose, attaining that objective. You should have a question and you should read to find the answer to the question. So reading should be targeted towards achieving objective. So reading skills also entails that there should be techniques for good comprehension. You should skim and scan through in the process of reading. And the essentials of effective reading includes having good phonetics, be aware of the vocabulary you are using and fluency, and reading comprehension. There's another skill that ought to be developed also in business communication, and that is a writing skill. The writing skill is actually very important part of business communication. Good writing skills will allow you to communicate your message with clarity and ease to a far larger audience than through face-to-face or telephone conversation. So good writing skill is very essential. And you have different types of writing. The expository writing. You also have the descriptive writing, persuasive writing, narrative writing. And the characteristics of a good writing skill is that it should have a parallel structure. It should be concise. The sentence variety should be embraced. There should be correct spelling and grammar and effective paragraphing. Writing process actually is made up of a pre-writing organization. You have to organize your writing. First of all, pre-write, do an organization of the writing. Then you write, you do a revision, and then you edit in order to come up with an effective write-up. There is another issue of note also in business communication, and that is meetings. So a meeting is actually formal or informal deliberative assembly of individuals who to debate certain issues and problems and to take decisions. So formal meetings are held at definite times, at a definite place, and usually at a definite duration. To follow at a definite duration, and the time is also specified. So you can have also different types of meetings. You have the status of action, decision making, and brainstorming meeting. And there are characteristics of a successful meeting. The meeting must have a clear purpose and should stick to the agenda. It must have an agenda that is adhered to. The meeting must start and end on time, and participants must be properly prepared and meetings of the meeting taken. So conducting an effective meeting, you have to outline your key meeting points with an agenda and the duration in which the meeting is going to take. So at the end of this session, you should be able to, the issues that we have addressed will enable you to have a clear understanding of what business communication is. And looking at the issue of conflict management, you should be able to appreciate what conflict and dispute is, the types of conflicts, the types of conflicts and how to manage them, the types of contract disputes, conflict management, dispute resolution, steps before conflict or dispute resolution, the strategies for preventing conflict and disputes, and then the methods that are used for dispute resolution. So when you talk about the issue of conflict or dispute, a conflict or dispute in a contract is actually a legal problem that can arise when the parties to a contract have different understanding of the terms of the contract, or when one party fails to fulfill its contractual obligations. When there is non-understanding of the terms of contracts and failure to achieve contract obligation, it can lead to disputes in a contract. Actually, contracts are an essential part of the business world. And as they are set out, the terms and expectations of the deal are clearly highlighted. However, disputes, despite the efforts to make them clear and comprehensive, disagreements can always arise. So contract disputes can be very costly, it can take time, and negatively impact the business relations or relationship. Who can, you know, how can dispute be resolved? So who can dispute a contract is what we ought to look at. Any party that is directly involved in the contractual relationship can dispute the contract. And these parties, both the party seeking to enforce it and the party on the other side on which it is being enforced, either of these parties can dispute a contract, as well as the parties that are already listed in the contract. Other parties who have a direct interest or are affected by it may also have the right. They also may have the right to dispute it under clear circumstances. The contracting parties, the primary parties involved in a contract, are the ones who enter into the agreement, and they are bound by the terms of the agreement. So they have the right to dispute the contract if they are in disagreement, or if there are breaches or issues that are related to the interpretation of the contract. The assignees and transferees can also dispute the contract. A business may decide to assign or transfer their rights or obligations under a contract to a third party. So these assignees or transferees step into the shoes of the original party and assumes their rights and obligations. So as a result, they will also be able to dispute the contract if necessary. And the third party beneficiaries can also dispute the contract. Another party that can also dispute the contract is the guarantors. So in some contracts, you have a guarantor who can provide a guarantee or assurance of performance or payments by one of the contracting parties. So the guarantor would have the right to dispute the contract if there are issues related to the performance or payments. Contract disputes can come in different forms. It can come in the form of breach of contract. It can come in the form of misrepresentation. It can come in the form of unreasonableness. It can come in the form of mistake or misunderstanding. However, there are two main types of contract breaches. There can be material, which are very fundamental to the contract, or minor issues that are not very fundamental and can be overlooked. So the materials have so explicitly captured those issues. And you can refer to it. There are also issues of note in, conflict in procurement, precisely, can arise as a result of diverse interest, miscommunication, and resource limitations. These issues are adequately addressed in the material. So thank you very much. And there are also ways of managing conflict. And conflict can be managed in diverse ways. Um, there are steps that will facilitate in the resolution of conflicts, and steps that need to be taken are to review the contract terms, identify the root cause of the dispute, gather relevant evidence, and consult with your legal counsel as the case may be. Uh, these have been explicitly captured in the materials as strategies to prevent or to manage conflict. And these strategies entails clear communication, stakeholders engagement and collaboration, training, third-party mediation, contract review, and feedback loops. So it is expected there are also methods that can be adapted in resolving conflicts, and these include negotiation, and there are benefits that the negotiation method also avails. There is also the mediation method that can be adapted. We also have under advantages to the mediation method, the issue of cost effectiveness. You can also adapt the arbitration method. And lastly, you can adapt the litigation method, as the case may be. And that should actually be the last resort. So at the end of this course, there is a case study that I expect us to look at, and so that you will appreciate the extent of comprehension. But maybe before we go into the issue of a case study, we should look at the summit of the tips for successful dispute resolution. Uh, the tips that you should have, you should arm yourself with in order to resolve dispute. There should be open communication, maintain an open communication, and be prepared and highly organized in the course of resolving your conflicts. And keep in mind the goal that you have to achieve, is to resolve that conflict. So you have to be focused and also be prepared to compromise. It's not a win-win situation. So you should be prepared to let go some of the benefits that you might have. And consider involving a neutral third party in resolving the conflict, as the case may be. So one expects that when you arm yourself with these tips, you'll be able to resolve conflicts that may arise in the course of the execution of contract that you have entered into. So I expect that at the end of the course, you should be able to address this case study. And, it's a case study that involves a multinational pharmaceutical company, Pharmacia, that has entered into a research and development contract with a biotechnology setup, biotech. So the contract specifies that biotech will conduct research and development on a new drug candidate for Pharmacia. So in exchange, Pharmacia agrees to pay biotech a certain amount of money and to grant biotech a license to the drug if it is successfully developed. After several years of work, biotech announces that it has developed a successful drug candidate. However, Pharmacia disputes the quality of the data supporting biotech's claim and refuses to pay biotech the agreed upon amount of money for biotech a license to the drug. So definitely you see that a conflict resulted in the course of execution of this contract. So how can this dispute between pharmacia and biotech be resolved? So this is the group work that we're going to look at to appreciate the extent of comprehension of conflict resolution, also business communication that I have briefly addressed. Thank you very much.